The United States have not been represented in men's soccer in the Olympics since 2008, but the under-20 men's national team is trying to make that change. Over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a qualifying tournament. So in this video, we're going to go in-depth talking about the U.S. team for that tournament, heading into the qualifiers both for the Paris 2024 Olympics and the under-20 World Cup next year. All right, joining me today to talk about the roster for Under-20 World Cup and Olympic qualifying is Gideon Sutherland. So we had Gideon on the channel a couple of months ago to discuss the pool for this U-20 cycle, and we made a depth chart. And I think for the most part, that depth chart has held up pretty well. Now he's back to talk about this qualifying roster, what we think about it, what the strengths and weaknesses are, how we think they're going to play, will they qualify or not. So Gideon, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, before we jump into the roster, I just want to give a little reminder to everyone to check out our top 50 USMT prospects list for 2003 and later. I'll put the link in the description, so go check it out. It was me, Gideon, and Marcus Shirez who worked together on that, so very excited to share that. But let's jump right into this roster. So Gideon, before we go position by position and talk about some guys who are and are not there, just what are your overall thoughts on this 20-man squad?
Yeah, so some people were down, some people were excited. For the most part, I'm pretty neutral. I think it could have been a bit better than what it was, but I'm not too disappointed. I think one of the main major complaint was the defense, and while the defense I think could be better with some of the defensive inclusions, I'm not really worried. I think we have good center backs there in Neil and Craig who can handle the load, and I think on the flanks, left back is a weak spot, but it's not something that I'm overtly scared about or too worried about. I think Noah Allen can hold his own on that left side, especially at an under 20 level. Outside of that, the midfield is great in my opinion. I don't think it could have gotten much better with some of the calls. I think there's a few spots maybe you could argue for some change, but other than that, and then there's a lot of versatility in our attacking pool with tens who can play wing, striker, and all that jazz. So you can have a lot of movement around there. So overall, I'm genuinely excited about it and can't wait to see what they could do.
Yeah, I think for me, I look at about a year and a half ago when we had the under 23s qualifying for Tokyo. And yes, of course, there were guys like Pulisic and McKennie and all that, and Aronson and Weah, whoever, who weren't going to be released. I still think that out of the guys who were available, there were a lot of the best players still left out. I don't think that was the best squad they could have taken. On the contrary, when I look at this under 20 team, I know it's a different age group, obviously, and they don't have all those release issues that the under 23s would have had. But I think this is pretty close to what the best squad, in my opinion, would have been for this team, given players who weren't released, aren't available, are playing with the senior team, whatever. So that's why I'm pretty happy with this roster. Again, the defense is a little bit of a question mark, though there is a very good goalkeeper between the sticks in Chris Brady, so that does ease some of the worry there. The midfield and attack are both very strong. Obviously, no true number 9 is a bit of a concern, but that can be dealt with, and a guy like Cade Cowell or Caden Clark there, or even Paxton Aronson at this level should be fine. Who are a couple of the guys, I'll give a couple to before we go into it, who maybe were probably available but weren't actually called up. For me, there are 3 that jump out to me. All 3 of them were, no, 2 of them were with the under 19 squad. 1 of them wasn't with it at all. So the first one is Kobe Henry, who we're not sure if there's a release issue or if he's transferring or whatever. It's not 100% clear, but he was with the under 19 squad. He's not with this squad. He was with the senior team in December. He was with the under 20s for most of this cycle. Didn't make this roster. Number 2 is Esmir Bayraktarovic, who is a 10/winger who can also play the 9 from the New England Revolution. He's not eligible for the Revolution until August, so there's clearly not a release issue. He just wasn't picked. There's 1 or 2 guys I would have taken him over. And the third one is Chris Fletcher, recently just joined Loudoun United. on an amateur contract. He is maybe going to be in Europe, maybe going to be here. We don't really know what the situation is with him, but I still probably would have taken him over, again, one or two of the guys here. He's also an 05, though. That's just my opinion. Are there any other names, Gideon, that you want to mention?
Yeah, I'd say in particular, someone like Brooklyn Reigns at that 6 spot. I think he could have been an interesting name, again on the younger side, so there's still that to consider. But I mean, his minutes and the minutes I've seen of him in the Open Cup, he's looked really solid, really smooth, really calm on the ball. And I don't know if maybe just a third option to that Daniel Edelman, Obed Vargas 6 sort of battle. I think he could have been someone interesting. Other than that, not really.
Yeah, so like I said, I think this is pretty freaking close to what the strongest possible team was, given that, some guys are staying with their teams for preseason, like by choice, to try and earn a spot for next season, which is totally fair in my opinion. One or two guys were not released by their MLS teams. And of course, as always, there are a couple injuries. So for the most part, I'm very happy with the strength of this roster. I'm just going to mention the one guy really who wasn't released, and that's Brian Gutierrez. Check my pinned tweet on my Twitter. I recently did an interview with him. He talked about how he was excited and looking forward to this tournament and trying to help the U.S. get back to the Olympics and fighting for a spot in Paris. But then the Fire went ahead and didn't release him. It was kind of puzzling because he's not really a starter anymore because of the new signings. But it is what it is. It's only one player. He's not irreplaceable. It's not the end of the world. It would have been really nice to have him. He would have been great for this team. But it is what it is. Now, let's go position by position. We'll start with the goalkeepers, Chris Brady of the Chicago Fire, as you can see behind me, and Antonio Carrera from FC Dallas. Gideon, what are your thoughts on these two shot stoppers?
I think they're both pretty good. I think it's close. I don't think there's too much of a gap between either. I think you'll see rotation, especially in the group stage, and then one secure keeper when you get into knockouts for the rest of the tournament. I think they're both playing MLS Next Pro right now. Both of them are homegrown deals. Chris Brady's in sort of a more precarious situation club-wise because he has Gaga in front of him. And then Carrera has a few older guys. They just signed FC Dallas just signed a 23-year-old. So he has to deal with that. But they're both great shot stoppers, and I think they're both technically sound. Maybe not to the level that Gaga is technically, but still, there shouldn't be a problem, especially at an under 20 level. They're gonna perform.
I'm really excited to see Chris Brady with this team. He, for most of his youth career, has kind of been screwed over by the fact that he's at the same team as Gaga Slonina, and every time Gaga went to the national team, Chris Brady couldn't go because the Fire weren't going to let two goalies go. So, I'm glad he's going to get this opportunity to get the spotlight a little bit for the national team. And he's the best goalkeeper in this tournament. He's just come back from injury. So I'm really glad that he's able to get back in time. Hopefully he's 100% fit for the tournament. I think, again, like you said, we'll probably see a little bit of back and forth in the group stage in the game against Nicaragua in the round of 16, presumably. But come the last three games, the important ones, the ones that matter, the quarterfinals to qualify for the U-20 World Cup, the semifinals to qualify for the Olympics, and the final, I think we'll see Chris Brady in those games. And maybe the defense isn't the best. I know you think it's a little better than I do, but maybe the defense isn't the best. I'm really comfortable with having an elite shot-stopping prospect in Chris Brady, especially when we're going to be going up against teams like Canada, Honduras, and Mexico, presumably, in the later rounds of this tournament.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think both of them, whoever is the number one, which I think will be Brady, but Carrera is also really good, so you never know. Whoever is the number one for the majority of the tournament, I think is definitely good enough and probably going to be the best goalie on the field 100% of the time.
We'll go on to the center backs, okay? All right, on to the center backs, and there are three on this roster. We discussed them a little bit already, So just to read them off, they are Marcus Vercranis, Brandon Craig, and Jalen Neal. Vercranis and Neal are both from the LA Galaxy. They've been playing in USL Championship for their second team. And Brandon Craig has been playing in MLS Next Pro for the Philadelphia Union. He can also play as a 6, but I don't imagine we'll see him there in this tournament. I think for me, Brandon Craig is the lock starter. It's just a question of who's next to him, and I think it could go either way. For Vercranis does have the number 4 shirt. Based on the jersey numbers, that would suggest he's starting if you read into that kind of thing. But Jalen Neal, I think for me and for you and for a lot of people, maybe the better center back. So who do you think is going to win the starting job here, and what do you think of the center back core pretty briefly?
I think it's decent. Of course, like there's some other names out there that like people draw to, like Justin Shea and Kobe Henry. But Kobe Henry is going to France right now. He was just with the U19s in Europe when they were playing against England and Norway. So and he's going to his first team in France, which is Reims, who just moved to. So he's not going to be here. And then Justin Shea decided to do Hoffenheim preseason instead of going to the first team. So this is probably the best we can do for at least 03, 04 center backs. Once you get younger, it's like, are they ready yet? So I think for Vercranis, presumably will be the starter because of the numbers. I mean, I know like people are like, that doesn't mean anything, but at the same time, I think Jalen Neal would be a better center back, and it would be a better pairing to see Brandon Craig and Jalen Neal. Now, I can understand why they might want to start for Vercranis because of the type of center back he is versus Craig and Neal, who are a bit more similar in their stylistic play. So, like, Vercranis is more aggressive, and he's like more of a 1v1 defender. He has that sort of Miles Robinson build to him, while Jalen Neal and Brandon Craig are very much more passive, technical, possession style center backs. So you could understand why they might want to play for Vercranis and Craig or Neal with each other rather than both Neal and Craig to sort of make up for each other's inefficiencies.
Mm-hmm. So I think it could go either way. We'll probably see over the course of the tournament who ends up being the starting pairing. Once again, just a reminder for everyone watching, the important games, there are only 2 games that matter. The quarterfinal, which will likely be against Canada, and the semifinal, which will likely be against the hosts, Honduras. Those are the 2 games that matter. Everything else really doesn't matter that much. On to the fullbacks. There are only 3, which means there are only 6 defenders on the roster. So if somebody gets hurt, we'll be in a lot of trouble. But Mauricio Cuevas, who is joining up with this team, he had about a year and a half where he didn't really play that much, and then went to Club Brugge and has been playing for their reserves the last couple of months. I don't really know how well he's doing because I can't watch those games. They're not really out there to watch, but he has been playing, and he can also play left back, but he's primarily a right back. Very talented player. And then the backup right back is Michael Halliday from Orlando, who's been playing with their second team. And, you know, I mean, this is pretty much the best we can do. Maybe Devin Tanton, whatever. It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other at that point. I don't think there's a huge gap between them. And then the left back, the only left back on the roster is Noah Allen, who, I mean, I'm not a super huge fan of him. When we did our depth chart, we had him like 5th, but he's the best option because everybody else, for one reason or another, is not here. Jonathan Gomez is injured. Kevin Paredes is with preseason in Wolfsburg. Caleb Wiley is injured. He may be coming back from injury, but Atlanta United didn't want to let him, come back half fit. So that leaves Noah Allen, and he should be good enough to deal with this level. He should be good enough. But that's the group of fullbacks. Do you have anything to add about any of them?
I will say I do like Devin Tanton. I wasn't that's the other name that I was looking for earlier when you said players that could have been called. I'm not like certain that Halliday or Pieri from SKC or Tanton are too far in level from each other. I think Tanton is really good. I mean, he was with the Fulham under-23s, and I don't know if he will or not be competing for a spot this upcoming season for the Prem. Maybe like later on in the season, they might want to start an integration. But you never know. But I don't think there's like too much separating those three. So I'm not mad either way for Halliday getting called versus Tanton or Pierre getting called versus Halliday. It doesn't really, like, as that second center fullback, right back, I don't really think it matters. Now, I will say Cuevas is going to be really interesting because he, as a fullback, he might be our free kick taker. And we do have some good free kick takers and I
mean, there's also Paxton
corner
and
taker.
Caden Clark who can do that too.
There's good ones, but throughout the youth teams, he's been the guy, and his free kicks and corners are pretty good especially for a fullback. So that's another thing to look out for.
And maybe one name that wasn't even on the provisional roster, so I guess he's just not rated, but I just thought was an interesting prospect for this kind of a team would have been like Jacob Green from Loudoun United. And I know he's probably a little bit below any of those right backs, but he was just interesting to me because he can play right back and left back pretty much equally. So if we are only taking 3 fullbacks, it wouldn't have been crazy to maybe bring him as the backup just because he can fill in on either side. But with Cuevas being able to play left back, I understand why he's not here. But yeah, we'll move on to the midfielders. And this is where things start to get interesting because the midfielders are pretty freaking close to the best possible midfielders. We'll start with who's going to be the likely starter at the 6, at least for the group stage, Daniel Edelman. He is joining from the New York Red Bulls, and he has been here throughout most of the cycle. He kind of won the job from Danny Leyva in November camp. And then Obed Vargas is also in this camp, 05 again. We spoke about him extensively in February. He was the big shock, broke into the U-20 team out of nowhere, broke into the Seattle team out of absolutely nowhere. He will be joining up with his team only for the knockout rounds, which I'm fine with because the group stage games should be easy. So, on those 2 6s, just what are your thoughts a little bit on Edelman, a little bit on Vargas, and about Vargas joining up with the team late?
I mean, I don't really have any worries when it comes to them. Like, maybe you could have seen Moses Nyman, but he's hurt right now, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't, like, Daniel Edelman's serviceable enough. He can cover a ton of ground. Like, in the under-20 matches we've seen, he's just everywhere all the time.
He's definitely Red Bull.
Yeah, he's definitely pressing Red Bull style. Obed Vargas offers something a bit different. He can cover ground, and he's good at defense, but he's also more of a ball-playing 6 who also likes to drive into space and create stuff on his own. So that's something to look out for, especially when you like think about like some of the 8 pairings that you could see with those 2 players. Who's going to work off of who better? And I think Obed Vargas is the starter when he's in camp, and I think he, as a 6, definitely good enough to play. So maybe not as an 8, but as a 6 for sure.
All right, now we reach the point in the roster where positions don't matter because pretty much all of the rest of the guys here can play midfield, wing, and a lot of them striker too. So it's fuzzy. There are the guys that are listed in positions on the actual roster, which are different than how they're listed on the Concacaf official roster. So at this point, we'll just kind of start with players who are nominally attacking midfielders. So there's Quinn Sullivan, who is listed as a forward on the U.S. roster. Jack Mcglynn, who is a true 8. Paxton Aronson, who's a 10. Caden Clark, who's also a 10. Diego Luna, who is also a 10, but can play winger or center forward as well. And then Nico Sakaris, who's an 8. Alex Alvarado, who will be an 8. And Rokas Pukstas, who will also probably be an 8. So
I'll make a comment on Sarkisian.
There are some guys who are a bit above the rest, for sure. There's a bit of a gap here. So I guess we'll start with the guys who will probably get most of the minutes in the important games, at least. Quinn Sullivan, who I think will either play the striker or on the wing for most of this tournament. Jack Mcglynn. I really like Jack Mcglynn. Honestly, I think he's the starting 8 for me. Do you agree with that?
I don't necessarily agree because mainly because Alvarado was included in this camp. I think Alvarado may win the starting job just as a more classic number 8. And I think it also comes down to who's playing alongside them in the at the 6 role, because if it's Daniel, I think you want to play Jack, because Daniel, while great at defense and all over the pitch and high motor, isn't necessarily his passing isn't there, and that's Jack Mcglynn's specialty.
Yeah,
So
Alex Alvarado can do more both sides of the ball, I guess. So when it is Obed Vargas, when it's Daniel Edelman, sorry. Oh, yeah, Vargas. When it's Vargas, maybe it's a more well-rounded midfield like that.
And there's also something to consider that they've wanted Alvarado this entire under-20 cycle. It's just that Vizela wasn't releasing. That was someone tweeted that out yesterday. Mm-hmm. Or it was either tweeted it out or it was in the space. Someone revealed that. And Alejandro Alvarado was before he went to Vizela and at LA Galaxy was viewed as probably one of our if not our best 8 in the 03 class, and I still think he is. He's getting pro minutes, even if it is for a mediocre team in Vizela for a Portuguese side, first team side. So there's that to consider. So I think Alvarado may be the starter, but again, it could be circumstantial at who's at the 6, because Jack Mcglynn can make up for the deficiencies of Daniel Edelman.
All right, Caden Clark. I think he's probably going to be the starting as the more advanced of the 2 8s in this team, and he will start in the midfield. We'll come back to Paxton Aronson because he's probably going to play in the front 3. But Caden Clark, and Caden Clark can also play the false 9. But you think he's going to be the main creator, or do you think that the wingers are going to have to carry a lot? Because Caden Clark hasn't been in the best form lately.
So I think his club form is doesn't matter, because Caden Clark for the under 20s is a completely different player than Caden Clark for New York Red Bull. And there's 2 main reasons for that. New York Red Bull just doesn't fit the style of play for Caden Clark. He does not fit there. And then also the players around him in this under 20 team really complement his skill set. So his ability to create the right ball at the right time in the right situation is really good for players who are make good runs, such as Quinn Sullivan, and then players who can have that scoring touch like Paxton. So I think Caden could be a main creator, but he could also be the main profiter from chances created by, of course, those wings. If he plays the false 9, which I think he will. I don't think he'll start in the midfield, actually. I think he'll be our false 9.
He's going to play the 10, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Yeah, I think it's a bit weird that Red Bulls aren't releasing him for the pre-camp, because, he played 17 minutes last night. Is that really so crucial to their team that they can't release him for a couple extra days? That's weird to me, but we'll come back to him. Diego Luna. Sounds like he's going to be playing the 10. He can also play the wing. Also can play the 9. Sounds like he's going to be playing the 10 for this team. That's where he played in March in both friendlies. When he played the 10. So Diego Luna, thoughts on him? And, do you think he can really be an impact player for this team off the bench?
I think he's our super sub for sure. I think he's probably first man off the bench, other than rotation for tired players. So Diego Luna, who just made his move to Real Salt Lake, we got to remember that he made his MLS debut last week. So as an impact player, I think he can create a lot of chances. I think he's one of those sort of he's very unique in my opinion to the other players we have. He's a bit bigger, stronger, stockier, but his technique and all that stuff is the hold up is there. So maybe he's at the false 9. See, it's the question of who's the 9 in this camp.
It's just so fluid. We don't really know how this team is actually going to look. But assuming he is a 10, when I look at the other attacking options on the bench, Tyler Wolfe, Nico Sakaris, Rokas Pukstas, I don't think any of these guys are really impact players at all. So that's why I think Diego Luna is going to be so crucial to this team, just because the other attacking options on the bench aren't that great. Also, of note, this tournament is only allowing 3 subs, not 5 like most tournaments are. It's only allowing 3 subs. So who those subs are is going to be much more important. You can't just sub out your fullbacks because you want to just get a fresh face in there. You need to be more purposeful with the substitutes, and that's why it's great to have a guy like Diego Luna.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Luna is definitely an impact. I think he could. And what makes it so great about like all
he
of
can
these
slide
guys,
in numerous positions.
Yeah, you can sub like the majority of these guys, whether they're on the bench for rotation or lock starters, you can play them at any of the front 4 positions. So whatever you need in that instance, it doesn't really matter because you have the ability to slide people around. So whether Luna's the false 9 or it's Caden or it's Quinn, who is also playing the false 9, I don't think at the end of the day it matters too much because they can play it all.
Just to briefly cover all the bases before we finish up with the key attacking players, I'll just run through some of the other guys who are the attacking or central midfielders or wingers who we're probably not going to go into too much depth about. Rokas Pukstas is a midfielder for Hajduk Split in the Croatian League. He's got a couple first-team minutes. I don't really think there were a ton of other options. I don't think he'll make a huge impact, but he's competent enough to be an option. It's fine. Nikos Akaris, his dad's the assistant coach, so maybe there's just some familiarity there that made them comfortable with bringing him in. I don't really think he's up to this level. He's an 05. He was with the under-19s, if I'm not mistaken, when they had their April camp. I don't have a huge problem with it. I just don't think he's up to level, and I think there are better 05s than him as well, more than one better. But again, that's fine.
I know there were some questions about nepotism stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily that.
I don't want to throw any accusations because I don't have any actual evidence to suggest that, but maybe the familiarity did help get him in over some of the other guys who you and I both agree probably should have been there ahead of him. But then there's Tyler Wolfe, who's a winger. He's a bit of a surprise. I mean, he's not even the best Wolfe, but
Owen is. Yeah,
exactly. His minutes have tapered off for Atlanta United.
I don't really know much about him either. So like
he played against Argentina. I mean, again, I'm not sure he's really going to be an impact player, but I'm ready to be proven wrong. He's definitely got the right genes for it. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't really think he's going to be an impact player in the knockout games, which are the ones that matter. So those are the bases covered.
I would rather called him the Leo brother.
Now the three final players who are probably going to be the front 3 based on what I've heard. It's going to be Paxton Aronson from Philadelphia Union, brother of Brendan Aronson, Cade Cowell from San Jose Earthquakes, and Quinn Sullivan, also from the Philadelphia Union, who, Quinn Sullivan, for me, has been the best player of this U20 cycle so far. You're free to disagree, but based on the games that he's played for this team, both the ones that have the 5 games that we have video of, or at least I've seen video of, and the other friendlies that we've just heard about, Quinn Sullivan has been the best player. You're free to disagree with that, but he's probably going to start for this team, and I'm very excited to see where he slots in.
I don't know about best. Maybe. I think definitely most impactful. That's for sure.
Most impactful. I'm not necessarily saying most talented, but definitely most impactful in this cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
He scored a hat trick against River Plate, coming off the bench, playing as a false 9. Yep. He was one of the only players who actually looked somewhat effective in those games against like Colombia and Mexico. Did he play against Mexico? He definitely played against Colombia. Definitely a player I'm really excited to see. And this might be a bit of a breakout tournament for him if he can continue that form that he had in the Argentina camp, for instance, where he was really, really good, where he had 4 goals in 2 games. So, yeah.
So, I mean, like, as I was saying earlier, like youth tournaments are really good for scouting, for, like, bigger clubs to see players and go like, oh, maybe they can get the move. And with the situation that Quinn Sullivan's at Philly in particular, sort of like second fiddle to Paxton and sort of like perennially on the bench. Like, yes, he's a year younger, so there's that to consider. This under-20 tournament could be big. To getting a move now instead of later and potentially getting minutes at a higher level already, and sort of just raising a stock. This is a stock tournament
because
for
trust
like
me,
Quinn Sullivan.
there are teams in the Ruhr Valley of Germany that are certainly watching Quinn Sullivan for more reasons than one. So just keep that in mind. We don't need to go into that right now, but there are definitely teams that are watching him from that part of Germany. Cade Cowell, people didn't like our take about him back in February. I think if anything, we've just been proven right in the months since then. He's probably going to start for this team on the right wing. But do you have anything to add that we didn't discuss in February? In February, we basically said we don't really think that he has enough technical ability to actually be a starter for this team and long-term for the U.S. men's national team. Now, granted, he's physically so elite that he might be able to just run over some of these Central American teams. But I do think he's a bit overrated by a lot of people. Anything to add?
He's Jordan Morris 2.0. What can I say? Like, it's like he's sort of similar build, fast, not really that technical, can body people off the ball. He's not going to create a lot of chances. He might put them away.
Again, if I'm the coach, if I'm Mikey Varas, I'm putting Cade Cowell as my 9. Well, it sounds like he's going to put him on the wing, but that's what I would
argue. I would argue with Cowell is like Quinn and Caden are like, well, like especially Quinn is like, I don't necessarily think long term Quinn may be technical enough to create to play on the wing or in the midfield, trying to create on the dribble and get past players. But he is technical enough to hold up the ball and receive it. Is Cade Cowell even technical enough to do that as a
No, it would be more about getting runs in behind.
I know. So, but then you have that answer. Like the one thing that Quinn Sullivan is absolutely spectacular at is his runs. Mm-hmm. The runs that Quinn makes are great. And so you're left with this question of Caden Clark's the most complete player out of the 3 that could probably play the 9 realistically. Caden Clark's the most complete player and can do the most. Quinn Sullivan's probably the best actual false 9. And then you have Cade Cowell can just body people. So what do you want? I think
so what might end up happening is Cade Cowell is the odd man out. And over the course of the tournament, he ends up coming off the bench, which I know sounds crazy to people who haven't necessarily followed this kind of a team as closely, but that might end up happening. You saw that happen even with the under-23s, where some of the bigger names ended up getting on the bench because they just didn't fit the way the team was playing, right? So
I think if you really want to like effectively utilize Cade Cowell in this camp is the far post run. If he can just keep on hammering that far post for the cross from like the midfielder Paxton Aronson or the fullback, if he can get that far post run and just slot away chances, then he's effective. So his runs in behind and then that far post run, if he can just continuously do that, you could see goals out of him, and that could solidify him as that starter. So
worth noting, he is wearing the number 9 shirt for this team. Does that indicate he's going to be playing the 9? I have absolutely no clue. I'm not going to read into jersey numbers that much. But Cade Cowell's wearing the number 9 for this team. Paxton Aronson is wearing the 10. Quinn Sullivan is 7. And Caden Clark is number 11. So let's talk about Paxton Aronson. It's the final player we're going to talk about, and then we'll wrap the video up. He hasn't been having the best start to the season for Philadelphia, partially because the Union have been playing so well that they can't really bench their starters, and thus Paxton Aronson has barely been getting any minutes. But again, he's one of the most talented players on this team, has tremendous potential, probably maybe a more talented player than Brendan Aronson, but that's neither here nor there, because we're talking about this tournament right now, and he could be a useful player. No,
for sure. I think he's probably what he provides. I mean, he's like a Brendan Aronson. He's a pressing machine. He creates. He can create on the dribble. He's speedy, quick. I do think
he can finish too, which is
that's the
important.
main thing. Like the main thing he has on Brendan Aronson is he's probably a better finisher than Aronson. Like he's more impactful and he's willing to take shots at a higher rate, at a higher volume at least, and he puts them away too. So I think just having that on the flank, and then because he can create on the dribble, and then he can also pass. So having that on the flank, and then ability, like I said, to link up with Quinn, who he plays at the club level with, and then also, like I said, if like Cowell's on that right wing, for Cowell to making those crashing runs on that far post, for Paxton to create on the dribble and then pass it and cross. For that, I think he can be really effective. Whether that's cutting in and scoring or getting a bunch of assists.
Because of how all these 8s, 10s, wingers, forwards, false 9, whatever, because of how the versatile, flexible, fluid these players are and how many positions they've played even in this cycle for this U20 team, I'm interested to see how over the course of the 7 games, how it develops when we get to the most important games right at the end, how the team ends up looking, because it could be totally different than what we're saying right now, because the group stage games, the round of 16, that's going to be experimentation. We're talking about St. Kitts and Nevis, Cuba, Canada, and then likely Nicaragua. Those are 4 games that you can try anything you want to figure out what the best combination is, figure it out, because the last 3 games are the ones, really only the next 2 are the ones that matter. So now I'm going to ask you a question as we approach the end of this video. Let's just assume group stage, we navigate that successfully. Nicaragua, most likely, we navigate that successfully. Then Canada, quarterfinal. Honduras, in 105-degree heat in San Pedro Sula, semifinal. Do the United States qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympics in men's soccer?
I think we qualify for under 20s. Let me see how that match goes, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. It's like, I think on talent, this is an incredible team.
On talent, we should.
On talent, this is the best team by far in the region, better than Mexico. However, I mean, Honduras, not to mention, have knocked us out of the last 2 Olympic qualifiers.
I will say Honduras have not looked strong. Their under-20s have not looked strong.
Then again, they didn't look very strong
Salvador
in 2021 qualifiers either. But this time, unlike last time we were playing in Mexico, the time before that we were playing in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. This time, we're playing in San Pedro Sula in July. So I don't want to read into that game too much. Hopefully Costa Rica knocks them off and we don't need to worry about it. But
I think Costa Rica is a beatable team, but just like the home atmosphere of Honduras, I don't know, because
it's tough. It'll be tough.
It's weird. I will say this. I don't think we're going to win this tournament.
No, because Mexico have had so many camps. Mexico have had so many camps that they're such a well-oiled machine that even on significantly less talent than the U.S. has, and by significantly, I mean there are guys who are dual national Mexican Americans who, if they were in the U.S. system, probably wouldn't even be on this roster, who are starting for them and looking really good. They are such a well-oiled machine with incredible chemistry that Mexico will walk this tournament and get the trophy. But it'll be tough. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Honduras also haven't had as many camps as a team like Mexico. So, but I think playing at home for them is going to be great. Though, at this point, I think we're making a lot of assumptions because we just projected how the tournament was going to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, tuning in, make sure you subscribe because we're not going to do anything through the group stage because those games don't really matter. Sometime, most likely, the plan is to do another video going into those crucial games toward the end of the tournament. We'll do another video talking about the previous games and previewing those final games. So stay tuned for that. Like this video. Don't forget to check out the under 20 list. The link is, as I said, in the description. Please check it out. But Gideon, do you have any final words before we wrap up?
I believe we will win.
I believe that we will win. Well, hopefully we'll be talking to you after we coasted Group A, Group E, whatever, coasted past Nicaragua, and are preparing for a crucial quarterfinal to qualify for the Under-20 World Cup. If things don't go according to plan, maybe we lost to St. Kitts and Nevis. Who knows? But thank you for watching. We will see you guys, hopefully, in 2 weeks.